Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Consider This. Today I'm going to be talking about OCD and what it's like living with obsessive compulsive disorder. So let's get going. Okay, I'm going to try my best to keep a straight face while doing this episode. It's going to be very difficult because when you talk about OCD, when you have OCD, it sets off a lot of triggers, but I will do my best. I think it's also important to say that I actually plan on doing an entire series just on OCD because there's just way too much to talk about in one 10-minute video. I also don't believe the illness gets the attention it deserves. So that's why I want to do that series. But yeah, I will try and give you as much info as I can in the limited time that we have. Right, so first of all, a lot of you out there are probably wondering what exactly OCD is. So I have this description from a very good book on OCD that says obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, is a psychiatric and psychological mental health issue. An obsession is an unwanted intrusive thought, and this may present itself as an idea, image, impulse, urge, memory, or other internal information, and you experience it as unwanted and distressing. That's very important to note. It's unwanted and it's distressing. A compulsion is a behavior designed to reduce or avoid the discomfort that comes from your experience of an obsession. And the behavior may be physical, such as washing or checking, or mental, such as reviewing or neutralizing. Basically, if you're an OCD sufferer, you have an obsessive thought that comes into your mind. It causes you great discomfort, and you carry out a compulsion in order to neutralize the pain. That's pretty much what it is. Now I know a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, well, we thought OCD was just about being neat and tidy and things being straight. Sure, that is definitely a part of OCD, but that's just a tiny part of it. There are so many, sides to OCD, and a sufferer doesn't have to suffer from all of it. They could suffer from just one aspect of OCD and not another. Some types of OCD, but again, I will talk about these more in the OCD series, are just right OCD, something that I actually suffer from, responsibility OCD, scrupulosity OCD, contamination OCD. Contamination OCD is actually something I don't personally suffer from, but I know a lot of people out there watching this do. Well, let's talk about that right now for a second, okay? The coronavirus pandemic is ongoing as I shoot this video. Now, we are all being told to take extra precautions in order not to catch the illness, right? So you may be out in public and immediately after leaving the public space, you may go and wash your hands, or you may use hand sanitizer, or you may avoid touching anything in public altogether. Now, that's being diligent because you know that there is this pandemic in the air and you are doing whatever you can in order to avoid catching the sickness. Someone with contamination OCD is constantly on edge and worried about catching a disease or falling sick 365 days of the year. Coronavirus or no coronavirus. Someone with contamination OCD will go to a public place, touch a public doorknob, and suddenly feel like, oh my gosh, they're going to catch some crazy exotic disease, and they will immediately run and wash their hands or do something because the internal data that's going on is telling them that if you don't instantly wash, you're going to die a horrible death. So, as you can see, OCD affects people in different ways, and it really is a distressing illness. And that's really why I wanted to talk about it in this video. So now I'll tell you about my personal struggles with OCD, which honestly, I've had my entire life. I did get clinically diagnosed with OCD when I was 29, but yeah, I've been living with this since I was yay high. The funny thing is though, is that as a kid, I used to be very superstitious, okay? And I used to engage in all of these very outlandish rituals because I used to have this voice in my head that used to tell me that if I didn't do these things, I would get bad luck. Now, bad luck was just an umbrella term for anything bad happening, right? It could be failing a test or losing the hockey match or getting dropped from the rugby team, anything like that. So my mind used to tell me, well, in order to avoid that happening, I had to engage in these rituals or superstitions, right? Obviously now I know what I was doing was engaging in compulsions in order to neutralize these obsessive thoughts. But when I was young, I didn't know this was OCD. I mean, to give you a few examples of some of the rituals or compulsions I used to do, like I used to be morbidly scared that I would get bad luck if I stood on a crack on the street. So literally, I would tiptoe around the streets of London like I was some sort of ballerina out of the Bolshoi Ballet, trying to avoid stepping on a crack in order to avoid the chance of getting any bad luck. Something else was at boarding school. At boarding school, we used to live in a corridor with bedrooms either side. Well, this voice used to tell me that I had to open and shut my door 25 times every night, or something bad would happen to me the next morning. So literally, I'd be there at midnight, quietly trying to open and shut my door 25 times. And the other kids were like, Sid, just shut up and go to sleep. But the mind wouldn't let me rest until I did it 25 times. Except it wouldn't have been 25 times, it would have been 24 times or 26 times, because 25 is an odd number. But then it wouldn't have been 26 times because half of 26 is 13. So do you understand where I'm going with this? My mind would always come up with a way to get me to engage in this compulsive behavior. I think my OCD was at its worst when I worked for RCB during the IPL in India. Oh my gosh, those games were like one massive OCD minefield for me. I mean, literally, I could only take a sip of my drink during certain balls of the over. I could only blink while the bowler was at a certain point in his run-up. I could only speak to people during the strategic timeout. And that's not because I was in the zone watching the game. That's because there was this voice in my head saying that if you don't do this, Sid, you're going to bring your team bad luck. I mean, the fact that these were professional athletes, all that logic went completely out of the window. And it was really distressing. And, you know, this compulsive behavior sounds funny to you. I'm sure a lot of you watching this are laughing right now. Trust me, I'm trying to keep a straight face while saying this. And yes, it does sound funny. But trust me, if you have OCD, and I know a lot of you out there know exactly what I'm saying, it is far from funny. And these obsessive thoughts that keep screaming in your head are brutal and they are painful. And the compulsions that one does are equally as painful. And, you know, it gets to a point where you just waste so much of life engaging in this behavior that, I mean, I'm almost getting emotional talking about it now, because you waste so much time engaging in behavior that to the outside world who don't have OCD, they think you're crazy, but you think it's an absolute must. Otherwise, everything's gonna fall apart. So what's helped me the most is this amazing workbook that my therapist gave me called the Mindfulness Workbook for OCD. It has changed my life. Bear in mind, I only started working on it in December, and I'm still currently working through it as I record this video. It is very much a work in progress, but I can tell you that in the 3 months since I've been working through this book, I have felt more freedom and more at ease than I felt in 32 years. And honestly, this is not a paid endorsement or anything, but this book has literally been life-changing, and I can't express in words how much it's changed my life. So if you are a sufferer of OCD, I highly recommend getting this book. Start working through it. Yes, it's going to hurt. Yes, it's going to be painful, but that's what happens when you shine a light on any illness. But trust me, it is definitely worth it if you want that freedom. So I hope I've been able to give you a little bit of a insight into what I struggled with OCD in the limited time that we've had. I will end this by saying that the biggest takeaway that I've had from the work I've been doing on OCD is that thoughts are just thoughts. They're not mandates to act, no matter how loud they scream. And really, you have no control over your thoughts. So just surrender to that fact. What you do have control over is the behavior. So find a good cognitive behavioral therapist, and they will be able to show you how to change the behavior in order to deal with the intrusive thoughts. So I know it's tough, I know it hurts, but trust me, there is a way for peace and happiness for all of us who suffer with this.